Choose your plan. ArrowRight. It's hard to ignore the sense of helplessness in Ukraine's corridors of power. Almost 2 years after Russia launched its full-scale invasion, officials in Kiev continue their long-standing pleas to their partners in the West: give us weapons, more aid, political commitments. President Volodymyr Zelensky toured Western capitals at the end of last year and appealed for support at a time of growing international fatigue due to conflict and paralysis in the U.S. Congress over new additional funding for Kiev. Around the same time, his top general, Valery Zaluzhny, lamented the stalemate that had emerged after Ukraine's highly anticipated counteroffensive in 2023 failed to make strategic headway against Russia's deep defensive lines. As my colleagues reported over the weekend, U.S. officials and their Western counterparts are bracing for a lean year in which Ukraine's increasingly depleted forces will focus on bolstering their defenses rather than dismantling Russia's land grab. The Kremlin controls roughly a fifth of Ukraine's internationally recognized territory, including Crimea, which it illegally annexed in 2014, and a large swath of southeast Ukraine. The U.S. view, of course, of the conflict undermines Zelensky's stated ambition to expel Russia from region by this October. Last week, Pentagon officials showed up empty-handed to a monthly 50-nation coordination meeting for Ukraine. The money coming from the USA for weapons and aid fell into the trap of domestic politics. Reports from the front lines indicate that many Ukrainian troops are running low on ammunition and artillery supplies. Visible far away from the battlefield is the political drama in Washington. House Republicans have already blocked the last tranche of funding that President Biden is trying to allocate for Kiev. Analysts believe Russian President Vladimir Putin is eyeing potential return to power of former President Donald Trump, who is likely to become the Republican presidential nominee in November election. Trump could scale back his support for Ukraine and be more friendly to the Kremlin's security concerns in Eastern Europe. As my colleagues have reported, the Biden administration and European allies are working on a long-term, multilateral plan aimed at countering this scenario and ensuring future support for Ukraine. This includes economic security aid commitments spanning next decade and could pave the way for Ukraine to integrate into Western blocs such as European Union NATO. Biden will announce the U.S. plan of this strategy in the spring. My colleagues wrote, this policy poses risks, including political ones, if Ukrainians begin to blame their own government for stagnation on the front lines. Likewise, officials in Western capitals are keenly aware that their citizens' patience for financing the Ukrainian war is not infinite. In midst planning, Washington also appears be preparing argument that even if Ukraine cannot retake all of its territory,